Welcome to Brain Vision.
Okay, so we're doing chapter 26, problem 75. So it says a solar cell 3 centimeters squared, so 3 by 3 centimeter cell, has an output of 350 milliamps at 8.4 or 8.8 volts. Sorry, I can't talk very well right now. So output of 350 milliamps at 0.8 volts. And it says a solar panel that delivers close to 1.3 amps of a current at an EMF 120 volts to an external load is needed. So we need 1.3 amps at 120 volts. How many cells will you need to create this panel? Okay, so to build up a higher voltage, we know we put the cells in series. And if we need 120 volts from a series of cells, and each cell is 0.8 volts per cell, we just divide that and we see that we need roughly 150 cells to provide the voltage. Since all of these cells are the same, they're going to have this, or all on series, they're going to all have the same current going through them, with a current of 350 milliamps. To achieve the higher current now, we need to make banks of these cells that can all be connected in parallel. So if we have cells or banks of cells in parallel from each other, then their currents are going to add. So if we need a 1.3 amps of current and we're getting 350 milliamps per bank, we divide this out and we need, it says 3.71 banks. Since we can't really have banks of different amounts because they're going to have different voltage, we need each bank to have the same amount of cells in series, because otherwise they would have different voltages from each other. So we have to round up here and use 4 banks of 150 cells each. So how many cells total is that? 600 cells needed. Let me write that better, sorry. 600 cells needed to create this panel. So the second part of the question is, how big of a panel will you need, and how should you connect the cells to one another? Okay, so we know that the panel area is 600 cells, and each cell has a 3 times 10 to the negative 2 meter times 3 times 10 to the negative 2 meter area. So the total area here, if we multiply these together and times it by 600, is 0.54 square meters. So we need 600 cells. We need it to be an area of 0.54 square meters. And the last question it says is, oh, not the last question, second to last, is how should you connect these cells? So we're going to have 4 banks in parallel. Like this. Where each of these have 150 cells in series. So we have 150 groups of 150 cells in series, and 4 of those groups connected together in parallel. Okay, so this produces a little bit more than we need, right? Because we only needed 3.71 banks to produce, right? So this is going to produce 1.4 amps at 120 volts. And it says to optimize the output. Oh, sorry. How can you optimize the output of the solar panel? Well, we can always have it pointing directly at the sun, obviously. Right? Point at sun. Which you can see sometimes, depending on where you are, if the sun's going to be moving a lot, it's worth it to put small motors on your solar cells that are going to track the sun. But that obviously takes some energy, so you have to think about, is it worth it to set up a stationary solar panel at the average, or the one that the angle that gets the most direct sunlight on average, or is it better to create small motors on that tilt your solar cells to follow the sun? But that's going to take some energy, so it's going to be an engineering problem and just figure out what works best, right? So for different areas, it's going to be different, but a lot of the less sunnier places, it's better to just put it up at a fixed place that gets the most average across the time. But yeah, it just depends.